Alright, all you up-all-nighters, you insomniatic TV watchers, gamers, grapplers, and drivers, and especially you streetlight crusaders from all around the world. Welcome to the 5:34 in the morning edition of the Tuesday Night Special. I am your insomniatic host from the East Coast, DJ Smokey, bringing you the best from the North, South, East, and West that the world of music, games, and wrestling has to offer. And seeing the fact that we are here back with our regularly scheduled programming according to Carl and the Maestro, we might as well waste no time and explain to you guys what's going to happen on this very special late night delight edition of the Tuesday Night Special. Because we kick things off with what happened during this week's edition of Monday Night Raw from Minneapolis, Minnesota, home of the Minnesota Twins. My favorite baseball team, too. Also, besides that, we go into a very special high school days edition of the As Seen on TV. And according to Carl and the Maestro, the anniversary of this show might be today. Oh, cool. Next up on the plate, we go ahead and check out some video game hits and clips while trying to scratch that indie itch you've got at home from the world of Cade for another edition of the Cade Triple S Deluxe. Then we find out what sort of crazy weather we're going to expect for this week and what sort of crazy outfit Dan the Weatherman Stu is going to have to go along with it for another edition of the weather update. And according to Carl and the Maestro, the outfit Dan the Weatherman Stu's got planned for this week is another bird-themed outfit for the spring. Somebody needs to tell him that doesn't really work like that with the bird outfits for spring. But anyway you look at it, folks, finally, last but not least, and hopefully before Dan the Weatherman Stu gives us some form of avian-like fever with disco involved, we wrap up this show yet another edition of the Indy Report, which is me giving you guys two news stories followed up by local content information from local artists performing in a local area live near you. And I guess with that said, I might as well tell Carl and the Maestro to kick up the beats, crank out the tunes, and most importantly, take off that silly bird beak. You don't need to inspire Dan the Weatherman Stu any further than he needs to be, cause it's time for us to bring some fun and delight on your street-lit, moonlit Tuesday night. Only here, right here, on the Tuesday Night Special. So let's get this streetlight show started, folks. Alright, all you streetlight crusaders, and I guess a couple you wrestling fans who are still up for the night, welcome back to the Tuesday Night Special. And now it's time for us to find out what happened during this week's edition of Monday Night Raw from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Possibly one of my favorite baseball teams of all time lived there, none other than the Minnesota Twins. Go Twins! Go Twins! But besides that shout out we just gave to the Minnesota Twins, Monday Night Raw would kick off with the recap of what happened last week during the main event championship match between Rhea Ripley and Io Sky and the chaos that ensued during it. And after that bit of chaos would take place, Adam Pearce would be in the center of the ring talking about it and saying that, yeah, you know what? I was wrong thinking that Rhea and Io could be professional for the match, and was definitely wrong saying that Bianca Belair should have been the special guest referee. So instead, we're gonna finally have a triple threat match at WrestleMania. and would call out not only Io Sky, Bianca Belair, but Rhea Ripley as well for Bianca to be rightfully pissed, but at the same time she said she doesn't even care anymore, and she's happy that she's in the match. And after all the stuff that I went through just to get into this match, winning this said Elimination Chamber, being a special guest referee, I'm really glad you're in this, because now she gets a chance to go right through you just to get that said championship, and would tell her to sign the contract, not to push it in her face. Really? Really? For Rhea Ripley to immediately sign the contract before explaining herself and shoving it back in the face of Bianca. For an argument to break out with Io being the third wheel in the conversation once again. For her to just immediately just leave the ring, and I thought she was just gonna walk out, but instead would decide to do a springboard drop kick, hitting Rhea Ripley in the back of the head into Bianca, knocking the both of them out, picking up her championship, celebrating, and leaving. And I got a feeling that might be the same thing that may happen at WrestleMania if they keep this back and forth bickering going. But meanwhile, backstage at the clubhouse, we would get a special announcement. According to Carl and Maestro coming in hot from Twitter, we would see another match added to WrestleMania, seeing a fatal four-way match for the Intercontinental Championship, seeing none other than Finn Balor taking on not only Braun Breaker, Penta, and of course, Dominic Mysterio added in thanks to none other than Liv Morgan. And Finn obviously not happy with that, but Liv Morgan reminding him that, it increases the odds for you guys to win the championship. And what's better than one Judgment Day member being in the championship match than two? Only for Dominic Mysterio to smile about it, but at the same time Finn Balor to wipe that smile off his face, for him to say, people are saying a lot about you behind your back. They're saying that you're not tough enough, that you're a loser, and you don't have that killer instinct to win the big one. But don't worry, you'll prove them right by the end of the night. I'll be here in the back rooting for you while you do it. And Carlito giving him a little bit of reassurance, telling him that he'll join him at ringside, because Finn has nothing to do with it, or doesn't want anything to do with it, according to Carl and the Maestro, and I don't blame him. But meanwhile, on SmackDown, folks, and to get this out of the way, and a bit of disappointing news that was spoiled by the internet wrestling community before KO could even say anything about it, Kevin Owens would announce that after his match that he would have against Sami Zayn at the Elimination Chamber in that no-holds-barred match, it would lead to a neck injury for Kevin Owens, and he would unfortunately have to sit out for WrestleMania this year and get neck surgery. And how would Randy Orton respond after he wanted revenge against him? Well, he would respond by cashing in on that $50,000 bond, or that $50,000, fine that he paid for several months ago by giving none other than the GM of SmackDown a good old-fashioned RKO. And he warned him in advance saying, you paid me $100,000. That's for next time. And so I guess next time is now. It'd be funny if he made him pay the fine anyway, regardless, but, we'll get to that later, because the next match to take place on Monday Night Raw would see none other than Bayley going one-on-one against Laya Valkyria for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. And during this match, where action would go back and forth, we would see a nasty tiger knee to the face of Laya Valkyria by Bayley, followed up by a sunset flip, reversal by Laya Valkyria for a near fall. Even seeing Laya pull off a beautiful pendulum stretch that we haven't seen since Day of Reckoning, for her to switch it up into a pinfall for a near fall. Crossbody by Laya Valkyria, still a near fall. Nasty hit off the turnbuckle, rattling the brains of Laya Valkyria, followed up by an elbow drop right to the spinal cord, still for a near fall. even seeing a Miss Tope Suicida to the outside of the ring by Laya Valkyria countered into a Bailey to belly for a 9 count, nearly ending this match. But what would possibly end this match, folks? Well, we would see Bailey inner channeling her Chris Jericho by pulling off a lion tamer in the center of the ring, but would try to go for the rose plant, seeing the fact that Laya Valkyria, like MC Hammer, was too legit to quit, and would end up being caught by the deadliest move in Monday Night Raw. Well, the Monday Night Raw special. But in this case, a jackknife pin that would get Laya Valkyria the win and for her to retain the championship via pinfall. Now, after the match was over, as Laya Valkyria would try to go for a hearty handshake, that handshake would get slapped right out of her face by Bailey, and Bailey to go back outside of the ring and come back in and give her a good old-fashioned hug. Now, the reason for that, folks, is for 2 reasons. 1, sportsmanship. Reason number 2, the fact that they're in a tag team gauntlet match to decide who's gonna fight against Liv and Raquel at WrestleMania this Friday on SmackDown. And more news later on who the other people who are gonna be in that match. But meanwhile, backstage on Monday Night Raw, we would see none other than the Machine himself, Bert, coming backstage to talk to a couple of the wrestlers. And one of the people he would run into would be Chad Gable saying, it's nice to see that you came here to see me, the only good thing to come out of Minnesota. But Bert would inform him he didn't come here to see him. Only for Otis to come out of nowhere with, oh yeah, to rip the shirt off just like Bert would do. And Bert would say, oh, sorry I took your thing, man. Babe, that's our thing now. For them to hug it out, and I got a feeling in the near future, we will see him on an episode of Something's Burning. I hope. Then we would head up to the rafters to see none other than Ludwig Kaiser addressing the elephant in the room from last week after the whole incident with Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair with silence, but instead would address the fact that he's the fastest rising star in WWE and he's still upset about having no match at WrestleMania, and would say that if he's not given one, he will take action against whoever is not gonna give him one. And yeah, didn't specify who this person is, but just wants a match that Adam Pearce won't give him. But after that bit of nonsense from Ludwig Kaiser, next thing you know, we would see AJ Styles getting confronted by Karrion Kross backstage after he would say that he would embarrass Logan Paul, only for Kross to remind him that you got embarrassed last week. And at the same time, this AJ Styles is not going to work for WrestleMania. We need the real Killer Instinct version of AJ Styles, and would inform him that if we don't get this other AJ Styles to win, we all lose. Only for AJ to say, oh, you want a more tougher version of myself? Well, don't worry, you're gonna get it next week when we do the dang thing. Now, granted, he didn't say that, but at the same time, it was made official that there will be a match next week between Kross and AJ Styles. And speaking of matches, folks, the next match to take place on Monday Night Raw would see none other than the LWO members of Hawking Wild, Cruz del Toro, and Dragon Lee going up against the Creeds and El Grande Americano. And after what happened last week, Dragon Lee wanted the head and mask of one El Grande Americano and would try to get it, but during this match where action will go back and forth with a lot of high-speed action, including a 3-way corner smash and a 3-way tope con hero to the outside of the ring, leading to a triple superplex by all 3 members of American Made. Oh wait, I mean the Creeds and of course El Grande Americano, leading into a sit-out powerbomb that would be broken up by a 1 thanks to a shooting star press from Julius Creed. Even a step-up Mario-style version of a high-flying version of a tope to the outside of the ring, and even a corkscrew off the top rope taking out the Creeds. only for Ivy Nile to give a metal plate to El Grande Americano underneath this mask, only for Rey Mysterio to point it out, for him to get hit with it, and then for Dragon Lee, who tried to take the mask off, to get hit with it as well, leading into a loaded diving headbutt for El Grande Americano to win this match via pinfall. In the most disgraceful way known possible, according to Colin the Maestro. But after that match was over and later on in the night, we would hear from Rey Mysterio, rightfully pissed off about what happened, and then we would hear from Adam Pearce saying, "Oh, I know you want revenge. Just name the time and the place." And the time and the place would be named at the grandest stage in them all of WrestleMania. And that grand stage match would not be against Chad Gable, oh no. It would be against none other than El Grande Americano. Are you kidding me? In his third match in the company, he's gonna be fighting on the grand stage of WrestleMania. That is ridiculous, and especially against Rey Mysterio. But at least at the same time, Rey Mysterio gets a chance to wear another cool mask at the grand stage of WrestleMania, which I can't wait to see. And after that bit of an announcement, folks, we would get a recap of what happened last week with Jimmy Uso getting beaten up by none other than Gunther, who would try to make his way to the ring. And then before he can even do that, we would hear from the tag team champions of Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for them to get announced that the Party Girls, which we know and love so well, of Carter and Chance, will be fighting in that gauntlet match, as well as Natty and, of course, Maxine, even seeing none other than Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark going for it, and the Secret Service team of Piper Nivens and Alba Fire. And finally, last but not least, outside of Me, Chin, and B-Fab, the team we mentioned before of Laya Valkyria and Bailey, for Liv Morgan to say they're great, but not as great as us, because we're the greatest tag teams of all time. And the last time I heard somebody saying they were going to be the greatest of anything ever was Lita before Unforgiven, and that did not end well for her. But outside of that, they would say that they were going to win and defend the championships at WrestleMania no matter who they fight against. And speaking of WrestleManias, folks, or WrestleMania-like matches, we would see Gunther, who would make his way to the ring, parading with the championship, for Jey Uso to come out, and instead of doing the classic yeet moves that he usually would do, would have a serious look on his face. Gunther, sitting there smiling, thinking that everything's just all honky-dory, would get the mic slapped out of his hand. And then would hear from Jey Uso asking him, "Did you talk to your family? Did you talk about family stuff?" "I talked to my family, and I had to tell my mother what happened to Jimmy. That not only did he get 15 stitches, but he's laid up in the hospital." For Jay's mom to ask him, "Why didn't you protect your brother?" For him to say he was afraid. And he was afraid of what happened, said that the blood that was on the hands of Gunther is now in his hands as well, too. And after what he did and violated his brother, and then in his darkest moment, he realized something. He ain't afraid of him no more. And would tell him to hug and kiss his family, because he's gonna pray for him before WrestleMania, more for him than himself, and would forgive him and would ask for forgiveness for what he's about to do, because he's gonna get him for not only him, but for his family, and he's gonna take that world title at WrestleMania. More or less waking up the main event Jey Uso that people knew and loved, that followed around with Roman Reigns for the longest amount of time. And then meanwhile, we would head into the next match of the night, because Carl and Michael said what comes next with the recap of SmackDown will be involved after the main event, which would see none other than the New Day going one-on-one against the War Raiders for the Tag Team Championships. Now, if you think the New Day's been disrespectful to Big E thus far, well, they really took it a step further because it would show a picture of what happened during the WrestleMania where we would see Kofi winning the World Championship being photoshopped to only show Xavier Woods. Big E photoshopped right out of the picture. Only for Tony, the guy who's going to be at the roast after WrestleMania, to roast Michael Cole throughout the duration of this match and cheer on the New Day like a cheerleader. Because during this match, we would see Xavier Woods trying to get a steel chair, but the chair getting knocked out of his hands, and more or less his said jaw piece being knocked off as well too, as he would receive not one but two Mike Knox-like running clotheslines into the said barricade 2 times. Only for this match to really pick up with a War Machine after delivering the Viking experience to Xavier Woods for near fall for Woods to somehow still break it up. Even seeing a makeshift chair fight during this match for Ivar to hit Xavier Woods to bring this match to an end via disqualification. And I got a feeling Xavier Woods knew exactly what he was doing with that. And afterwards would decide to hit Ivar in the back of his neck with that said steel chair. Ouch! And to make matters worse, they would throw Eric into the said chair that they put in the corner and even toss Ivar into the timekeeper's area, only for them to try to pull off a daybreak using a steel chair around the neck of Eric, only for the security to stop this from getting any worse. And I got a feeling this is somehow going to lead to a match at WrestleMania betwixt them. And the next match to take place on Monday Night Raw would be our main event of the evening, which would see none other than Penta going one-on-one against Dominic Mysterio. And during this match, we would see Dominic trying to prove that he has the killer instinct and the cheerleading that Liv Morgan gives him for him to pull off a 3 Amigos during this match for near fall. Even would try to pull off the Mex Destroyer and actually hit it. And even a 619. Good for him. But when it came to the Frog Splash follow-up, Penta would counter it for near fall. But ultimately, this match would come to an emphatic end where we would see Penta pulling off the sacrifice directly into the Penta driver for him to win this match via pinfall. And Carlito, being a sore loser and with the help of Dominic Mysterio grabbing his leg, would be able to beat the daylights out of Penta after the match and even hit him with a backstabber, only for Braun Breaker to come out. Now, folks, after Braun Breaker would make his way to the ring running faster than a bus in a school zone, he would hit Carlito with one of the nastiest spears I think I've ever seen since high school football for me, and that's saying a lot. He hit him so hard, he flipped and rolled toward the ring afterwards, which is nuts. Absolutely insane. But Braun Breaker wouldn't be done spearing people after that, because next up he would give one to Dominic, then even to Penta, this time on purpose. But after spearing the daylights out of all of them, Backstabbing Finn would show up and would hit him with an Eye of the Hurricane, aka what we like to call it, a dagger, and then immediately would try to take him out and grab his title above his head, only for Braun Breaker to be rip-roaring pissed than he was before, decide to take the said championship away from him and tried to spear the daylights out of him for Finn to roll out of the ring and avoiding a bullet after running out of the ring. But after that bit of event, we would see Chad Gable on the stage saying that he gives a good thumbs up to El Grande Americano and that Rey Mysterio is gonna get put down for good thanks to El Grande Americano. Thank you! For Paul Heyman to make his way with a disgusted look on his face, and rightfully so for Chad Gable in his hometown. But then would get on the microphone and would say that he will always be loyal to Roman and CM Punk and will never be disloyal to either of them. But before he could say anything further, Seth Rollins would come out before he could finish his statement and would welcome everybody to Monday Night Rollins and would say, tonight's not about me, it's about Paul Heyman. And would say that, why are you still on the side of those two? Especially Roman Reigns, because he doesn't care or respect you at all. It would bring up what happened last year at WrestleMania after Roman Reigns would lose, that he would decide to take a sabbatical, disappear into the ether, not take him with him, but would leave him into the loving arms of his family that would lead to chaos that would last all the way up until November of Survivor Series. And speaking of Survivor Series, he would bring up CM Punk, someone who was Paul Heyman's best friend, but didn't really care about him, and said that, yeah, he left you high and dry 10 years ago after he left the company. Once again, bringing up that old classic chestnut. And would even bring up the fact of War Games and saying that he wasn't the first choice, he was the last choice, and the only reason he accepted because there was something in it for him. And would suggest that he would remove himself out of the match at WrestleMania and for Paul Heyman to decline. And Seth would say, well, you know, there's another way I can remove you out of the match, you know, for your own good. All you need is one good stomp to the back of the head and all your problems will be over. But how much are you actually worth, huh, Paul? How much are you actually worth to them? Are you worth that much? And would poke and prod at him until Paul Heyman would stand up by saying, don't you put your hands on me again, for Seth Rollins to put his hands on him again, for Seth Rollins to make his way down to the ring and immediately, or more or less CM Punk, to make his way down to the ring to attack Seth Rollins, leading into a brawl all the way around the ring betwixt the two, only for it to be broken up after Seth Rollins would try to stomp the ever-living Daylight's flag tag out of none other than Seth Rollins. And after he would miss, what would happen next? He would try to roll inside the ring and immediately try to take on Seth for Seth to get the upper hand with a stomp of his own, stomping the lights out of the Second City saying. And then as Paul Heyman would cry above the head of CM Punk saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen, I'm sorry, Seth Rollins would be loading up for yet another stomp and would have Paul Heyman in his sights, but instead would stop the stomp and would say, now you owe me a favor. For Paul Heyman's stress levels to once again rise up to critical mass to close out Monday Night Raw for this week with the fans of Minnesota singing the song of the Visionary. But what will happen by next week? Will we see the New Day getting their comeuppance and somehow a WrestleMania match that they obviously don't deserve after their actions? Will we see the WrestleMania picture being lit up brighter than a neon light as we head to the grand stage in Sin City? And what of Cross? What of his evil plans that he decided to include onto AJ Styles? Will he finally be able to back up the evil talk that he's been talking for the past several months? We find out the answer to that and more on another exciting Raw Before WrestleMania edition of Monday Night Raw. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again as we go grab a glass of water. And when we return, we'll be back with more of that streetlight delight as the Tuesday Night Special rolls on right after this. So don't go watching those infomercials just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you Streetlight Crusaders, and especially you Insomniatic TV channel surfers out there tonight. Welcome back to the Tuesday Night Special. And now it's time for us to go into another Comedy Central tribute edition of the As Seen on TV. And the show we have up on the plate for you this week is none other than the classic show from the 90s, only known as Strangers with Candy. And the show, according to Carl and the Maestro, is technically celebrating its birthday this week. Nice! And the meat and potatoes for this said show would feature none other than the 46-year-old troublemaker known as Jerry, who would try to go back to school to try to clean up her life for things to still go horribly wrong. Yeah, and I think that's the PG-13 version of what she actually did, but leading up to that point. But besides that, folks, what did I love about this said show? Well, the fact of the show itself reminding me of a more darker version of the classic Rodney Dangerfield film of School Days. Yeah, definitely reminded me of that. And also the fact of the star power that would be featured during this show, which would not only see, and get this folks, Will Ferrell, Andy Richter, David Cross, Tim Meadows, Janine Garofalo, and also would feature Paul Rudd during this show as well too. Just to name a few. But outside of them being a part of the show, if you think the star power wasn't good enough, we would see also, and Carl and the Maestro handed me the list, none other than Amy Sedaris, who would be a part of this show as Jerry Blank, the said troublemaker we mentioned earlier, for 31 episodes of this said show of Strangers with Candy, but would also play Deb in the movie Elf in 2003, Jill in Puss in Boots in 2011, and even play Tony in the 2009 film of Jennifer's Body. Not bad. Next up, you would have the ever-funny Paul Danilo, or Danilo? According to Carl and the Maestro, we could go with the second one, who would be the half-brother of Jerry Blank during this show, a part of 31 episodes of Strangers with Candy, but would also play Mr. Rooney in Be Kind Rewind, as well as being a writer, a part of Strangers with Candy, and even playing a writer, a part of 966 episodes of the Colbert Report. And speaking of the Colbert Report, next up, folks, we would have none other than Stephen Colbert himself being a part of this show for 31 episodes, but also being a part, and I'm pretty sure played Phil Ken 7, a part of the classic show of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, but also was a writer for the said show Strangers with Candy, and was featured in 1,266 episodes of the Colbert Report. Just saying. And also was a part of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert for 252 episodes, and was also featured a part of the Daily Show for well over 1,300 episodes. And according to Carl and the Maestro, he was also a writer, a part of the series of Our Cartoon President for 45 episodes. Then you have none other than Greg Hillman, who would not only during this show play, and Carl and the Maestro said, the Principal Onyx Blackman. They were laughing about it, but didn't believe it was true, but yes, that was his actual name, who was a principal for 31 episodes, a part of Strangers with Candy, but would also be a part of the 93 film of The Fugitive, and would also play as none other than the skating orderly during that said film, and would revise his role as the principal, a part of Strangers with Candy, during the movie that was released in 2005. Nice! And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, he was also in Sugar as a large diner guy. Alright? Next up on the plate, you would have none other than Deborah Rush, the evil, wicked stepmother of none other than Jill, a part of this show, a part of Strangers with Candy for well over 31 episodes, but would also play Ava Blazer, a part of In and Out in 97. A part of the movie The Box as Clemence Stewart in 2009, even would play the Purple Rose of Cairo as Rita in the 85 film, and also would play Veronica Grant in the 98 classic film of You Got Mail. Next up on the plate, you would have none other than, and according to Call of the Maestro, Lark Spies. Nice name. Who would play Derek Blank, a part of this show for 29 episodes, but would also play Null, a part of the Metal Gear Solid portable game, as well as playing Stell, a part of one episode of Star Trek Enterprise, and even would play a voice as a male player, a part of Tony Hawk's Underground in 2003. I knew his voice sounded familiar. Then you would have Orlando Paddleboy, or Pablo Toy. According to Carl and the Maestro, you can go with the second one, who would not only play Orlando, a part of 22 episodes of Strangers with Candy, but would also play Will, a part of City by the Sea in 2002. Catfish, a part of the movie A Blue Hour in 2005, and was even featured during one episode of Jag as a K for one episode in 2005. Then you would have none other than Sarah Wright, who would not only play Coach Jerry Wolf for 14 episodes and Jerry's stepsister during the said show, and also would play Dorothy, Becca, and Butterfly Scout, a part of 30 episodes of All Hail King Julian, and would play additional voices, a part of Hotel Transylvania in 2012, and would also play Diane, a part of the Thin Pink Line in 98. And according to Carl and the Maestro, we can mention one more person, and we decided to mention none other than Maria Thader, who would not only during this show play Timmy, or Tammy Little Nut during this show. Yeah, all right, we'll compose ourselves, but would also play Wyoma, a part of Forgetting Sarah Marshall in 2008, even playing Deb Clarington, a part of Night of the Living Dead, Sonia Baker, a part of State of Play in 2009, and even playing none other than Rory, a part of the 2006 film of Accepted. Not bad at all. Now, one of my favorite characters during this show, I got a feeling it has to be Jill, a part of this said show, seeing the fact of all the abuse she underwent during this show despite her trying to clean up her act. And of course, one of my favorite episodes would have to be the episode where she would get kidnapped and her stepmother, to prove how evil she truly was during this said show, would say, "Oh, we'll never see her again." And every single time the phone would ring, pick it up, instantly hang up. What will I ever do without her in my life? Pick up the phone and hang it up again. In the most ridiculous ways known possible. And seeing the fact that this show originally kicked off as, well, as of today, well over 26 years ago on April 7th of 1999, but unfortunately could not last long, but lasted well over a year and change until October 2nd of 2000, and spanned over 30 episodes with 3 seasons, if you count the movie, technically 31 episodes. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review shows along the lines of TV Guide or any of those other famous TV reviewers you know of out there, we say this: if you want to try to watch a show that featured a woman who decided to go back to school after nearly screwing her life up to a point where she couldn't recover from, only to screw up the said school to the point where apparently it led to a spin-off that would take place not even 3 months after the original version of the show, then I recommend you go out there, pick up your TV channel remotes, and watch that show. And trust me, folks, a lot of laughs to be had for it that would eventually lead to a spin-off called Strip Mall that we almost forgot to mention, but Colin and Michael said it would be worth mentioning. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with more of that streetlight delight as the Tuesday Night Special rolls on right after this. So don't head downstairs for that pre or post midnight snack just yet, folks, and stay tuned. We're back with the Insomniatic show that celebrates a 26-year anniversary of a cool show we watched as kids, only known as the Tuesday Night Special. And yes, caller to my show, this was another show that came on just around the sweet spot time of me watching music videos, a part of MTV. You know, back when they used to play it frequently, all the way up until 5 in the morning. That's the reason why I had real sleeping problems as a kid. But was worth it to see all those cool shows and listen to that cool music. But besides mentioning cool shows and cool music, and speaking of that to clue in with this part of the show, I think it's time for us to check out those video game hits, clips, as well as scratch that indie itch you've got from the world of Indycade for another edition of the Indycade Triple S Deluxe. We kick things off with the art wall. And the art wall picture that we have up for this week comes from the developers Cinder Studios. Nice developer name, by the way, with their said screenshot or artwork for the video game of Wild Thaw. And the artwork that they provided for this week shows a wild fireball making its way down what appears to be some form of cavern with 3 other fireballs following it down the way and lighting up the inside of this cave with fire crackling off in the far distance. Pretty cool, but hot to the touch. And this automatically reminds me of a what-if scenario if it was from the perspective of a fireball from Spyro the Dragon. And here's hoping in the near future for this game that you get a chance to grow into an even bigger flame to take out dangerous creatures. Cause I got a feeling you're gonna be running into a couple of them, seeing the fact that you have to thaw out an ice mountain. So you're gonna need that heat. And I got a feeling you're gonna be able to bring it in this game. But besides being able to bring the heat, folks, the next thing we head into is the sound wall. And the sound we have up for this week comes from none other than Brain Foam with their said sound of Bright Bang Flash from the video game of Knuckle Sandwich. And when I close my eyes while listening into this sound, it automatically reminds me of the said show I hosted in the middle of the night called the Subway Stompers, where it would feature a whole bunch of indie stompers who would stomp throughout the entirety of a subway station. Now, originally it involved a whole bunch of tap dancers, but with the fact of the floors being rubber and no sound coming off it, they decided to stomp on the said subway floor until the police kindly asked them to stop. It only lasted 3 episodes for anybody wondering at home, because, one of them almost jumped into the rails, and that almost ended badly if we didn't have a net down there. And plus, the subway channels were closed, too, so we were at our leisure. But besides trying to explain myself out of a potential lawsuit that we were in, we now make our way on over to the Screenshot Saturday Showcase. And the Screenshot Saturday Showcase we have up for this week comes from none other than Boxelware with their set game of Aqua Park Tycoon. And the artwork that they provided for this week would show how much of an aqua park you can experience in this game with a giant oversized dual slide that not only featured a blue section but a yellow section that would intertwine with each other and would even have some form of spiral down at the end, reminding me of something from Rocko's Modern Life. And as a matter of fact, yeah, that's what this reminds me of. That trip to the water park in Rocko's Modern Life with a little hint of Sim Theme Park World. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this game that you can fully customize this water slide to your liking. Cause I got a feeling if you can, it's gonna be one hell of a water park if I get my hands on it. And Carl into my show said, no, you can't dump at least $50,000 into one giant long slide or log flume. Wanna bet? But before we get into an argument about that, folks, we now make our way on over towards the Indie Itch games to scratch that indie itch you've got at home. And the first game we have up comes from Hey Ho with their said game of 3D FPS. Them from the creators Luca Cernin with their said game of Combi's New House. Crazy 481 with their said game of Crazy Tag FR Jr. Pauletta with their said game of Neuron Knots. Dave 2KB with their said game of On Guard. And finally, last but not least, from the creator Zeka Afonso with their said game of Until I Die. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool indie games that are still making their way through the Indie Itch page to scratch that indie itch you've got at home for games, then you can go ahead and head on over to the itch.io page of one man only known as itch.io under the games section to check out all of those cool games for yourselves. But be warned, you may be there for a while. It's got a million of them. It really do. And if you also want to go ahead and check out any other cool games, a part of the art wall, sound wall, screenshot Saturday showcase, or even have your games featured over there as well, then you can head on over to their IndieCade.tumblr page, only known as IndieCade.tumblr.com, or head on over to their Facebook page known as IndieCade, or even their Twitter, Flickr, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, SoundCloud, and even their said Twitch page, as well as other websites that are all named the same, but it's just as critically acclaimed, only known as, you guessed it, folks, IndieCade. And I guess with that said, I think it's time for us to head back into that music once again and continue to listen into these diamonds in the rough as we try to turn your Tuesday night into a Friday night. Only here, right here, on the Tuesday Night Special. So don't go watching reruns of Seinfeld just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you Streetlight Crusaders, welcome back to the Tuesday Night Special. And oh, before we forget, we almost forgot to mention the fact of Punk's favor being that Paul Heyman was going to be in his corner for the match at WrestleMania. Yeah, how did I forget that again? Oh yeah, according to Carl the Maestro, we were so hyped about what happened after the main event that we forgot to talk about it completely. Yeah, that's the reason why we put it in sections where it makes sense. which I got a feeling I need to do next time and quit making an imaginary ladder that leads to nowhere right now. But besides that imaginary ladder, and speaking of just sheer insanity during this show, making its way up the stairs and into Music Village headquarters is none other than Dan the Weatherman Stu with the 5-day weather forecast for this week. Dan the Weatherman Stu, the microphone is all yours, and you look absolutely ridiculous with that outfit on. I hope you know that. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, it's your boy from Chicago, Illinois, Dan the Weatherman Stu, here to begin a 5-day weather forecast for this week. And DJ Smokey, you're mad because I'm representing summer or spring in the best way I can. Yeah. Representing summer spring? What is summer spring? Well, DJ Smokey, it's the rare months that you would have summer weather in the spring. That's why I'm dressed as a Robin. No Batman. Okay. See, usually I would just, trot off and just ignore this, but seeing the fact that the past 2 weeks you've been dressed up as some form of crazy bird-like character, I don't think I can ignore that for much longer. DJ Smokey, I was dressed as a bird 2 weeks ago. What about the other show that took place? What other show you're talking about? Oh, you mean that show? I don't know what you're talking about. I have no recollections of a show called the, what was that again, Carlin Maestro? The Moonlight Special? Yeah, never heard of it. Well, before you get everybody at home confused, could you do me a favor right now? Pretty please with sprinkles on top. Could you do the weather? Could you please do the weather? We're burning moonlight here. Go do the weather. Jeez, every night with this guy. All right. So for tonight, that's right, Tuesday night, it's gonna be a low of 26. Clear skies all around with winds going west, northwest at 10 miles per hour. And on Wednesday, a sunny day for you, 'cause it's gonna be a high of 49, low of 33. Sunny skies all around with winds going west, northwest at 8 miles per hour. And on Thursday, here comes the rain, 'cause it's gonna be a high of 50 degrees, low of 38. Nightly showers at 32% with winds going southeast at 3 miles per hour. That's 11. I'm at 11. And on Friday, start of the rainy weekend, baby. 'Cause it's gonna be a high of 46, low of 36. Rainy skies all around with winds going east at 11 miles per hour. And on Saturday, more rain for you, 'cause it's gonna be a high of 44, low of 38. Rainy skies at 80% with winds going north, northeast at 13 miles per hour. And on Sunday, not a sunny day at all, 'cause it's gonna be a high of 54, low of 41. Cloudy skies all around with winds going north, northwest at 10 miles per hour. And now you know, 'cause I've gotta go, because I am Dan the Weatherman Stu, and I am through for the weather broadcast for this week. And now back to the man who's holding my robin head in his hands, DJ Smokey for the Tuesday Night Special. Yeah. You know Dan the Weatherman Stu? This week, dressed up as a bird. Last week, dressed up as some weird form of hummingbird. I don't even know how to describe that outfit. Where are you getting these things from? Well, DJ Smokey, I got it from a friend who loves birds. Next week might be a condor as a heads up. Till then, Dan the Weatherman Stu out. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. What do you mean condor? What do you mean condor? There's not going to be a condor outfit that's going to fit in here. You know how big those things are. And he's left. And he left. He left. Oh, man, I can feel that headache coming now. I really can. You know, before this headache gets any worse, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into that music, and when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the Indy Report right after this. So don't go away just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Alright, all you Streetlight Crusaders, welcome back to the Tuesday Night Special. And about that thing with the condor outfit, we got a picture from Dan the Weatherman Stu, and boy, did it look absolutely ridiculous. And the wingspan on that thing alone, yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to fit in his office. And apparently, according to Carl and my show, no, he's not. But hey, you know, at least he can fly back home when things go wrong. Because I got a feeling they are. And no, Carl into my show, I'm not being a pessimist because of the outfit. But besides Carl into my show saying I'm a pessimist of sorts, I think it's time for us to go into one of my favorite parts of the show. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, none other than the Indy Report, which is me giving you guys 2 news stories followed up by local concert information from local artists performing in a local area live near you. And we kick things off with our first news story. Because for you fans out there who always wanted to see Shotzi and Scarlett team up with someone that could read minds and even hang out with a cursed doll, then this is the week for you. Because not only they would see a special guest known as Mysterion, the Mind Reader, which for some strange reason reminds me of Mentalk the Mind Taker from the classic series of Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law, but also they would be able to hang out with Liz as well too, and checking out a whole bunch of cool cursed objects, and one of them being a monkey's paw. Really? I wonder if they were able to make a wish. According to Colin the Maestro, yeah. And I got a feeling it didn't end well too, did it? Yep. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out this cool episode featuring a couple of very special guests and a couple of cursed objects, then you can go ahead and head on over to the YouTube page of One Girl or Two, only known as Scarlett and Shotzi, to check it out for yourselves. And in other news, and more or less indie cartoon news, for you fans out there who's been following along with the streams, checking out the cool musical tunes, well, the best part of it all is just right around the corner. And what am I talking about? Well, for you fans out there who wanted to check out an indie cartoon by the name of Far-Fetched and always wanted to check out the actual pilot for the said show, well, not even 24 hours after announcing the said Kickstarter for the said pilot, it was funded in less than 9 hours, which means we are gonna finally get a pilot episode for the show known as Far-Fetched, which for some strange reason reminds me of a more magical version of Scooby-Doo. I would have to say an even magical version or more magical version of the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, even with a cool animal that would be able to help them out in their adventures. Nice! And some cool music too that we hope to play in the near future. But if you guys want to go ahead and check out the cool Kickstarter for this said cool animation of the indie variety, which we'll check out more in the future for, then you can go ahead and head on over to the YouTube page of one man only known as Far-Fetched to check it out for yourselves. And yes, Carlin and my show, we're going to start mentioning indie cartoons for the As Seen on TV in the near future. And with that said, folks, we now make our way on over towards the concert information for this week, where we kick things off with Wednesday, April 9th. And the first bands we have up is Mike Garanja with the Coots, who's going to be performing in the Leona Public Library in Leona, New Jersey at 4:30 p.m. Gerald Espedito is going to be performing at the Aqua Blue Kitchen and Cocktails in Toms River, New Jersey at 6:30 p.m. Dave Fields is going to be performing at the Orange Lantern in Paramus, New Jersey at 8 p.m. And according to Carl and the Maestro, we've got one more down the pipeline to wrap things up for Wednesday night in a very short fashion. You can see the C4 Band, who's going to be performing at the Commodore Grill in Nashville, Tennessee at 8:30 p.m. You know what? Let's add 2 more bands to that. Because next up, folks, you also have Greg Fundis, who's going to be performing at the Mom's Place in Chicago, Illinois at 9 p.m. And now to finally wrap things up for Wednesday night, you can see Greg Hall and the Wrecking Ball. Nice band name, who's going to be performing at the Leaks Bar and Restaurant in Minneapolis, Minnesota at 9:30 p.m. And on Thursday, April 3rd, you can see these following bands performing in a local area near you live. The C4 Band is going to be performing at the Bobby's Idle Hour Tavern in Nashville, Tennessee at 12:30 p.m. Maturation Soul is going to be performing at the Humphreys Backstage in San Diego, California at 6 p.m. White Rabbit OBJ is going to be performing at the Cobra Lounge in Chicago, Illinois at 7 p.m. Southern Disposition is going to be performing at the Red Brick Tavern in Conroe, Texas at 7 p.m. Noline Hoffman with Cade Hoffman is both going to be rocking the Rev Room in Little Rock, Arkansas at 7 p.m. Bob is going to be performing at the Chanhassen Dinner Theaters in Chanhassen, Minnesota at 7:30 p.m. Sky Vega with the Sky Vega Band is going to be performing at the Shrine World Music Venue in New York, New York at 8 p.m. Now, before we move on to the next bands, I got a suggestion. Instead of calling them the Sky Band, why don't you call them the Sky Raiders? Or is that what they call their fans? I don't know. But before we get lost in thought about that, folks, next band we have up is Patrice Pike, who's going to be performing at the Saxton Pub in Austin, Texas at 8 p.m. The Rob Gracia Band is going to be performing at the Luna Bob in South Padre Island, Texas at 8 p.m. The Highland Divas is going to be performing at the Cutting Room in New York, New York at 9 p.m. And to finally wrap things up for Thursday night, you can see none other than Thursday Night Vibrations, who's going to be performing at the Mr. Peabody's in Encinitas, California at 8 p.m. Then on Thursday, April 15th, aka Tax Day, according to Carl the Maestro, you can see these following bands who's gonna be performing in a local area live near you. And Tuesday for next week, for those who didn't catch on, we usually would lead with that, but according to Carl the Maestro, we forgot. And the right? And the first band we have up is Jonathan Nicholson, who's going to be performing at the Panodrelli Winery in Sandpoint, Indiana, at 5 p.m. Palomero is going to be performing at the Max Restaurant Nightclub in Eugene, Oregon, at 5 p.m. Alexa Wiley is going to be performing at the Spinella's Off the Wall in Gresham, Oregon, at 6 p.m. A Killer's Confession with J-Man, Fantana, and Arterium is all going to be performing at the Brick by Brick in San Diego, California, at 6:30 p.m. Nate Nielsen Acoustic is going to be performing at the Red Brick Tavern in Conroe, Texas, at 7 p.m. Marty C. Moore is going to be performing at the Froggies in Virginia Beach, Virginia, at 7 p.m. Color TV with Lunes is going to be performing at the Rebel Lounge in Phoenix, Arizona, at 7:30 p.m. And to finally wrap things up for Tuesday for next week and all the bands we're going to mention for this week, you can see Kirk Eric Glendum, who's going to be performing at the Hard Rock Cafe in Hollywood or Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, California, at 8 p.m. And according to Carl the Maestro, you might as well mention two more bands after they laughed at the picture that guy had, which was a pretty cool looking suit. But the next band we have up is Desert Bloom, who's going to be performing at the Laguna Bob in South Padre Island, Texas, at 9 p.m. And now finally, last but not least, to wrap things up for Tuesday night for next week, you can see Milo Z, who's going to be performing at the Red Lion in New York, New York, at 10 p.m. If you guys want to go ahead and check out the complete list of bands that we couldn't list during this very broadcast, and trust me folks, there were a lot of them, you can head on over to ReverbNation.com to check out the complete list of bands that we couldn't list during this very broadcast. And while you're over there, check out a couple of their cool tunes. Trust me, they're worth the listen. And like we say at the end of all of these skits, go out there, support your local artists, and see these guys perform live. And trust me, they'll love you for it. And I guess with that said, I think it's time for us to head back into that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with the final segment for the Tuesday Night Special for this week, right after this. So don't fall asleep just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Well, all you Streetlight Crusaders, seeing the fact that we're fresh out of Streetlight Crusading oil and it's just about that time for us to get out of here for tonight, we might as well bring the Tuesday Night Special for this week to an emphatic close to get some more Streetlight Crusading oil. But don't worry, if you miss any of that Streetlight delight that we were able to give you for this week, we got you covered, because you can catch this show again one more time, all the time, on our SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr pages, still all named the same, only known as Music Village Radio, under the hashtag Tuesday Night Special 534. And before you think I forget Carla the Maestro, they can also check out this show on our Live 365 page, still named the same too. You know, we wanted to add it afterwards so you wouldn't tell us over and over again, which, funny enough, was about 534 times before the last song we played. And if you guys and gals out there want to figure out what other crazy and zany things we still got prepared for this month of fools, like Carl and the Maestro constantly reminding me of things while leaving sticky notes all over the place, approximately 534 of them, then you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube, Discord, and Twitter pages, still all named the same, only known as the Double Agent 0012. Before we head out for the night, we would like to thank, as always, you the Streetlight Crusaders out there, for listening in to a very special late night foolhardy edition of the Tuesday Night Special. If you guys and gals out there like what you heard, go out there and spread the word. You know what? Like the one episode where Jerry actually hit somebody with a towel while they were in the showers throwing strangers with candy. Yeah, you know the PR department knows where I'm going with this one, and they got a towel ready over in the corner. Well, you're not hitting me with that. And we would also like to thank you, the independent artists out there, for doing that musical goodness like you always do. And keep up the great work, guys. And here's hoping your music gets featured during a late night show in the near future. And why? Because we believe you guys. That's why. That's why. And plus, we need the musical tunes around here, too. And speaking of people we believe in to be a part of this show to keep the night a-moving, we would like to thank our musical guest for this week, none other than Jason Klug, with his said song, Pet the Dog, that was featured during the intro for this week's edition of the show. And of course, to none other than Carl and the Maestro for the song you're listening to right now in the background of the Late Night Cafe Wrap-Up that's wrapping things up for this week's edition of the Tuesday Night Special. Like always, guys, keep up the great work, and we can't wait to hear what you got coming down the tubes next. And finally, last but certainly not least, we would like to thank you, the independent gamers out there, for delivering all those sweet, sweet video game hits and clips we had a chance to mention during this week's show. And like always, keep them coming, because you never know what show might be coming around the corner next. Hint, 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 hint. And I guess with everybody thanked, you guys out there know we go out. I'm DJ Smokey on behalf of Carl and the Maestro, and for you up-all-nighters, late-night drivers, insomniatic TV watchers, gamers, grapplers, and especially you Streetlight Crusaders from all around the world, saying, ha! Got 'em right in the cranberries! But most importantly, when there's smoke, there's fire. And we'll see you guys next week for another late night mid-month delight edition of the Tuesday Night Special. But until then, see you next week. Go get some sleep, and good night, everybody.